Good morning. My apologies, I was a little late, but our party leader, Dr. Ekuru Okot, was here earlier. He had another engagement, so he had to go. Apologies from him. I'm going to try not to repeat much of what he said, which I think he was right on point. But I want to give some few reflections from Third Way Alliance. Because in the whole of this journey and these conversations, we were very, very consistent in the meetings with IBC and much of that conversation about preparedness. It was very, very interesting, the first meeting that IBC called for us to talk about their preparedness. And that was at the Hilton Hotel. In that meeting, NASA and Jubilee were all represented. And it was triggered by the Al Ghurair matter. And in that conversation, there were a few things that came through, but very, very amazing and scary too. So that we are not all that surprised that we are here today. In that conversation, it was about the tender of that Al Ghurair. And there was some revelation. One, the Jubilee side, especially the chairman himself, he did not deny that. What he went on to say is to say that even Raila Odinga himself had the interest on a 2.5 billion tender out in South Africa. All that conversation was never disputed. Our conclusion was this, that between NASA and Jubilee, all of them were simply fighting for that business space on one end, and they were fighting for control over the printing of that ballot paper and the actual electioneering process. And it was at that point that we made a decision that we will stay in this. We will stay very resolute for us to support IBC in whatever they did, and the Kenyan people, hold them accountable all the way. Fast forward that to now, what happened after that? There was the Dubai visits that happened, in that we had some very, very, very specific recommendations of how probably simply IBC could be trusted to hold a fair and credible election. Some of it was the serialization, some of it was the extra ballots which were printed out there, and we made a lot of noise, the 1.2 million. Some of it was the packaging of that material. We went to the detail around that. All of it was simply pointing that we were going to get in trouble in one way or the other. That trouble came in at Bomas. We were there, I think we spent probably 3 hours of sleep for the 4 days. Most of you were there. There was something very strange that happened which you need to really look at. When the results stopped streaming, Chebukati came in there and said and admitted that there has been this transmission failure, and there's a workaround around it. And that workaround was we were all given desks around there with a laptop each. We were promised to be given passwords to access the intranet, which had all the servers and these 34As and 34Bs, which my friend just explained with the stories around that. Now, at that point, it was admitting that the transmission has failed. We were going to go to the real manual of tallying the 34As and 34Bs as they come from each of the sections that were there. The end result was that all the agents who were there, the parties and IBC, would sit down and harmonize that before that 4C was announced and agreed upon. I think on the second, third day after that, it was a push and shove. Our presidential agent ourselves was actually literally forced to sign. And there's a whole story around that. But there was no harmonization process. So we came in with all our forms. I think over that 4Bs, we had probably 96 out of 200 and some. We didn't get all of them. So at that point, we did not know where Chebukati was getting the numbers, and the rest is story. So we think, one, the breach actually began right there, where IBC, right in the glare of the Kenyan people, the breach happens, they provide a solution, and they don't follow through. So came in now the Supreme Court, which we enjoined NASA, and in that, I think you as civil society must be very, very happy, because this is progressive of the country, that at least we have one arm of government, which had never happened before, who stood up to say no. He stood up to say no to much what ails this country. So at this point, I think the question that's there is, what's the way forward and what's our thinking? Our way forward for Third Way Alliance is, one, IBC continues to actually be an illegal, independent organization, and it's still not doing what it's supposed to do. They're not working for the Kenyan people. They're still working in the oscillation of the so-called two horses. A very simple ruling that was made. Very, very simple. I think a high school kid could read that and interpret it. That the election, the presidential election, never happened. Irregularities, illegalities happened. Those are done by people. And out of that, a fresh election was ordered. So from Third Way Alliance, all the people that voted for us, who we do not know how many, their vote did not count. So when we talk about the sovereignty of the Kenyan people, it's not there. And what did IBC do? They provided a direction that it's only going to be the two horses. That's really, it's going to be a runoff. Okay? I'm not a lawyer, but to me it's common sense. The ruling was very, very clear. It's a fresh election. The fresh election means all the 8 candidates who were certified by IBC would actually be on the ballot paper, so that the Kenyan people can have the same choices they had in an election that they did not participate, or they wasted much of their time and energy, but the vote was not counted. So at this point, I think from our side, and the biggest reason that we came in here to join you as the civil society, is to ask you to support what is right, to support the judiciary, because right now we have a chance to do that, for ourselves as civil society, for the political parties who are progressive, and support probably 2 things. One, let the court ruling stand that there was no presidential election, and let it simply be repeated as it is. Okay? With that on our end, we are still ready to go out and tell the Kenyan people that you've heard what happened. Our mantra was take back your country. This is all the reason we need to take back our country. There is bad leadership. We are seeing it every day, the bad leadership which is there. Total appalling. I think the last thing is still the civil society needs to hold IBC responsible. And I know we are all waiting for the detailed ruling by the court. But what we are seeing here, like my friend said, IBC seems still to be working for the incumbent. That's what it is. They were the primary beneficiaries, and now they're still holding on to that. Why is it that a chief executive of any company out there in the world would resign in a heartbeat or would be in jail right now? And we have Ezra Chiloba sitting there and talking. You know, we support what the chairman said, at least to begin with. Let all those people go, and hopefully some sanity will come in. So I think that's a challenge to the civil society at this point. where you have a new engine with the judiciary and this ruling, that you can go out there and with all your ways that you have. I think from our party side, we're fairly a new party. We will be party to that because we know it's very progressive. And with that, I think this conversation about us talking about peaceful elections and civil society, we're good at that. This is the reason that there is no peace in the first place, you know, and it's not rocket science. The international community who funds the civil societies were there, and actually shame on them with what happened there. We had this conversation prior to the election, and we pointed out these things, that this thing is coming. Now, I hope they're here, and they're going to probably do what is right. Because this thing is in the making again, and probably right now, to be honest, I was home much of the last week talking to people, it's not good. And we have to admit this tragic truth, that it is not good. Okay? The country is totally divided in two, and there is no sanity. The leaders that we hold accountable are going out there attacking the judiciary and saying things which, you know, you do not even want your children to listen to. So I think you, the civil society, have a huge job on that end to, one, really support and try to operationalize that Supreme Court ruling, and on the other hand, try to hold the IBC accountable. Thank you so much.